Sponsored by Viva Kia.
To be a successful business, you have to have the right pillars. So human resources is essentially, in a nutshell, is how do you create an environment where people can feel comfortable coming to work. What is black and white is you're supposed to hire people that are authorized to work in the U.S. Title VII specifically covers age discrimination, race, color, pregnancy. Now it's not just current pregnancy, it's past pregnancy, current pregnancy, and future pregnancy.
I hope you've been enjoying our podcasts. We've been having a lot of fun getting to know people because that's a way that we make a connection with everyone, right? So interesting people who have interesting stories. And we have Tommy Cano here today. He's a founder and president of HR Group, Cano HR Group. And, we want to talk about some of the things that are happening on the border. But before we get started with that and talk about just the feeling right now under the Trump administration and HR. But before we get into that, first of all, welcome and thank you so much for accepting to be here and give some insight to a lot of people who these are some questions that a lot of people are afraid to ask, but we'll get into that in a little bit. Tell me a little bit about yourself.
So I've been doing human resource for about 27 years now. I started my company on April Fool's Day, which is coming up, April Fool's of 2013. Before that, I was the VP of HR for Fred Loya Insurance. But my career actually got started working with the Texas Workforce Commission. That was back in 1998. And I was actually doing the investigations, approving or denying unemployment. So you got to learn a little bit about the labor law, if you will, on what's considered misconduct, what's considered performance, et cetera, et cetera. So 3 years into that, a company out of Dallas said, we hear you and we love the way you speak and you're bilingual and the way you're teaching us and would you come work for us? I decided to take the job and I became a consultant on unemployment tax management, which is all tied into separations and all that good stuff. And so I decided to take it on, and without me being a salesperson, we ended up growing to a big company here in El Paso, and then I met the Loya family, and then, they were in 2 states when I met them. By the time I left, we were at 580 plus employees at the time. By the time I left, we were just over 3,700 employees in 10 states. So I know that, human resources is a pillar on that. To be a successful business, you have to have the right pillars, the right CPA, the right accounting, director of operations, CEOs, the C-suites. Human resources is important because of all the ambiance, the environment, and so on and so forth. So all it did is it was making me stronger and stronger, especially since he grew in the state of, when we opened rather, in the state of California. California was just a different monster. And it made me who I am now, because out there, almost everything is illegal or everything is protected. So brought that to the city of El Paso, and I was also sitting on the Hispanic Chamber Board on behalf of Mr. Loya, and I was there for several years, but I was realizing that there was a lot of businesses, small, medium-sized business community, they were suffering.
Who needed the help?
They needed the help, but they couldn't afford an HR professional like a CPA, in-house CPA. So I decided to go back, and I think my calling was, and I really enjoyed the consulting piece. And I thought that was my calling. That's my American Idol dream. And so I decided to take a dive into it, and I said, I think I can do it. And here we are 12 years later, and we represent over 300 companies in the Southwest, and New Mexico, obviously Texas, New Mexico, Arizona, California. We've got them all over.
How many employees?
Total that we have in-house, 9.
So what is HR? Describe to me. A lot of people say, oh, the HR, got to go check in with the HR, and you got to go check in with HR to do all these things. What is HR?
So, simple human resource, but what does that mean, right? So when I explain to employees, what is it that you see in HR? What do you consider HR to be? The number one is they advocate for the employer. Some say they advocate for the employee.
Employer
and a lot
or
of them
employee?
say they're just there to terminate. And I said, no, that's a common misconception. Okay. So human resource is essentially in a nutshell, is how do you create an environment where people can feel comfortable coming to work, right? We manage everything from the introductory, the front door, they used to call this front door to back door. So front door is the interview process and the completing the paperwork and all that. I like to do my presentations and I like to tell staff, okay, I want you to show me the way you were sitting when you were interviewing for the job. And they all sit up. They do exactly
it's
this.
It's important to do that, right?
It's important to do that.
Yes.
And I ask them, who taught you that? I mean, nowadays,
At home?
TikTok, Google,
TikTok?
whoever, my parents, grandparents, whatever. And I said, okay, well, how many of you showed up late to the interview? Nobody raises their hand.
Well, nobody shows up late to interviews.
Nobody late to the interview. How many of you take out your cell phone during the interview? Nobody. How many of you shower for the interview? I mean, I hope all of them raise their hand, right? And how many of you walk out of the interview or don't show up to the interview and then still expect to have the interview the next day? And nobody will raise their hand. And the obvious answer to that is that's first impression, it's lasting impression. And then I ask them, well, then why is it that after you get the job, we start doing all those things, right? So human resource brings them back to the basics. Let's bring them back to the basics. Did you do that during the interview? No. Well, then, if things happen that are protected by law, then human resource had to put policy, order. We establish handbooks. We help them establish handbooks. We recommend the do's and don'ts. We're kind of on the backseat saying, this is what you're supposed to do, what you're not supposed to do. We're not operations, but very, very close to that operating feature that they have. I want to do this. I'm not going to tell you how to grow your sales, but I want to protect that the revenue coming in is not walking out by, misconduct. What we consider and it happens a lot, is there's a lot of mismanagement of duties. People call it, not doing performance. We call it mismanagement. If you're not performing your duties, you're mismanaging your position, your job duties and responsibilities.
So that's why it's important to have a job description.
Absolutely.
Okay. You've been doing this for 12 years. Have you, I imagine, like in TV and anything, any job, you've seen many, many changes. What are the biggest changes that are happening right now?
So there's a lot of immigration issues going on. You especially in El Paso, because we're a border city, we're having more issues in border cities that I see as a consultant versus cities, further up north. The raids that are coming in, documentation. So immigration, the Immigration Act, obviously they give the employer the opportunity to start your business, hire people, but make sure those people that are being hired have some sort of authorization to work in the U.S., whether it's temporary, whether it's permanent, whether it's a U.S. citizen. So the common misconception is that employers think that because they have 90% U.S. citizens, that they're untouchable. But oftentimes they don't meet the criteria of completing a simple I-9 form, which is required by law. And so these raids, they're getting tips of people being hired that are undocumented or illegal. And so that's what's happening. And the employers are pushing back saying, can they come in here and can they do this stuff? Right now, the administration, it's kind of a gray area, right? And it's not black and white quite yet. What is black and white is you're supposed to hire people that are authorized to work in the U.S. Even, again, if it's just a temporary.
No gray area there.
Absolutely. Yeah. There's no gray area there. But yet, they step into those holes.
So how are you going to handle this? Because obviously there's going to be more raids, and like you said, the things are very different on the border in all different circumstances. How are you going to handle it, and how are you going to? Hey, they're cured. I have 3 employees, and some of my best employees. What do I do?
Yeah, in those situations, I mean, it's very difficult because the best employee, usually like in a restaurant setting, the key employees are the cooks, the ones that really bring the sazon.
El sabor.
El sabor. And so, there's really nothing Cano HR can do at that point. I mean, more than anything, we say, look, if you can afford to go through immigration status and just go get an immigration attorney, right? And just go to an attorney and say, how can I keep my biggest asset within these walls? That's our only recommendation, because there's nothing we can do to go against law. And agreements between employees cannot supersede law, and law is what it is. And so that's always our recommendation. Otherwise, start from scratch and then see if you can find somebody that is authorized to work.
Let's go on the other side. How about what tips do you have for somebody who's going through that, who doesn't have their working papers? What do you do? It's like, why didn't you get them years ago? Right?
Exactly.
It's not that simple.
Yeah, no, and we encounter those a lot. I mean, even those that have that temporary permit and they know that it's coming up on renewal, procrastination is everybody's friend, but it's also everybody's enemy, right? And so they tend not to do what they're supposed to do. And so we do tell them, maintain your status, make sure you follow everything to the T. There is no other recommendation for people that don't have anything other than you got to go through the process. I mean, we're not your enemy. We just have to follow the law, and especially human resource, to your question, what is it all about? Well, we got to make sure that we maintain what the law is requesting and providing.
Well, we're going to take a little break. When we come back, we have a whole bunch of other questions to ask Mr. Cano here about some of the categories that are protected, like age and pregnancy, retaliation, and gender. So we'll be right back. Stay with us.
Aquí en Viva Kia, cada vehículo nuevo viene con Apple CarPlay. Mira esto. Hey Siri, ¿crees que soy guapo?
No.
Sponsored by Viva Kia.
And welcome back, everybody. Interesting people with interesting stories. We have a very interesting conversation today with Tommy Cano. He is a founder and president of Cano HR Group, and you're dealing with a lot of things. Now, I invited Mr. Cano to come over and talk about some issues because they're important issues to talk about, and every day we learn something new about our employer, about ourselves, about our friends, about what's happening in our community. So thank you so much for coming by. Yeah. So let's talk about some of the protected categories that many times you think that the employer is the one who has all the cards, right? But it seems that the employee has a lot more protections now and rights. Tell me about that.
So federal law, so what we look at when we go into companies, what we like to know them, is we got to study them. Who are you? How many employees do you have? How many companies do you own? And then we start grasping whether or not they're a protected employer. And by that I mean protected employees under the Title VII. Title VII is a federal law. So we look at federal laws, we look at state laws, then we look at county, and we look at city, municipalities, and then we look at their handbook, because if none of them have it, but their handbook has it, then you have to comply with your own handbook. But for example, what we look at is federal law, Title VII. For the most part, you have to have more than 15 people on payroll, okay? I don't even say employees anymore, Stella, because you may have a family member who doesn't show up. You may have a son or daughter who part-time, but you keep them on payroll. And if you have 14 people working, literally working, and you have 2 family members, that puts you at 16. So the misconception by the employer is that I don't have to comply with Title VII. Well, indeed you do, because Title VII specifically covers age discrimination, race, color, pregnancy, you name it, gender identity, there's a slew of disability, harassment, sexual harassment, hostile work environment. I mean, the list is long and distinguished.
I've seen that list. It's long.
It's long and distinguished. And so then from there, we have to look at state law. Is there a specific state law that perhaps the federal government doesn't honor or doesn't care about? But state laws have their own laws. So New Mexico, they have their own paid sick leave law. They have their own family violence provision that they cover in New Mexico. And so we look at everything. So to your point, employers, they think they have the cards on the table, but their employees have more. It's almost like playing Uno, and you just keep eating and eating and eating. And so, yeah, some of those are age discrimination cases. Common sexual harassment is very common. Pregnancy, there's a new pregnancy law, Pregnant Workers Fairness Act, who went into effect, and now it's not just current pregnancy, it's past pregnancy, current pregnancy, and future pregnancy. So yeah.
Really?
Oh yeah. Now it's not just she's pregnant, she's protected. Now the fact that they're going through the process of getting pregnant and they're having to go,
That
let's say to
IVF.
Houston, exactly. Those are protected as well now.
So when you go past pregnancies, okay, so let me tell you, when I had my daughter 36 years ago, she's 36 years old, I was out for 4 weeks. And I guess the Family Leave Act didn't exist back then.
Right.
But, they wanted me back on the air when I went back on the air. My son, I was gone for 3.5 weeks.
Yes.
And I had nowhere to nurse.
Nursing mothers is another one.
Nursing mothers is another one. I think they put me in a little. We'll get you in a little room. It's like, where?
Right.
So I had to plug in the machine in the bathroom and
hope nobody saw you.
And hope nobody saw me. And I had to. I mean, this is terrible to say, but I sat on the commode and I was nursing there, and it's just awful.
That's a horror story nowadays.
It's a horror story nowadays. But a lot of us just did it because we had to, right?
Exactly.
And then my 21-year-old, I got 17 weeks off there, so that made up for the loss of the other 2, right?
That's right.
But I think women just put up with a lot of stuff because you kind of had to, but you don't have to anymore.
Well, actually, the nursing mothers, the pregnant workers, other states have had that law for several years already. And now employers are required to comply with the nursing mothers, and it can't be a commode. It cannot be, it can't be just necessarily a closet, so to speak. But if that's the best option they have, I mean, it's something that has to be private with lock, so nobody walks in on them. Most employers, what they're doing nowadays, and recommendations we give, is if you have that extra storage space, make it a nursing room, because you can buy a small refrigerator that will accommodate putting their milk, breast milk in there, and just to do everything possible to comply with the law, and also advocate for the employees, nursing mothers, because that's employees nowadays, Estela, they're not just necessarily just looking for the money. We, after COVID, we see that there's a lot of competition, and your competitor is no longer just the same industry. Your competitor is somebody that's paying 25 cents more, $1 more, and people are leaving. What they're looking for is flexibility. They're looking for benefits, but they're looking more for flexibility because of those same reasons. There's that, COVID created that work from home habit. And so the best you can do is just consider all the laws and say, even if I don't have to comply with it, what am I going to do as an employer? Because, we talk about, and I don't mean to go off the subject a little bit, but we talk about, going after employees that are educated, right? Well, that's only 50% of the pie.
That much.
the other 50% is educating the employer. Because what's the point of bringing somebody in who maybe has a bachelor's, master's, recently graduated, they come in here, but your practices internally are so poor that the person's not going to feel comfortable coming to you. Going back to the question of HR, that's what we establish. How do we make this something where we teach the employer, do this, be proactive, don't be reactive, understand the law. If you can make the change and it doesn't put a burden on you as an employer, do it, because employees are looking for it.
COVID changed the world, obviously, and again, I think it probably helped the employee a lot more, because you look for other qualities, not necessarily bigger pay, but flexibility. Absolutely. So do you see that more and more people have the opportunity and the ability to get that bachelor's, to get that master's, and so you're getting a more educated employee, so that educated employee is not going to put up with a lot of other stuff. So when we come back, we're going to take a little break. When we come back, I'd like you to answer that question to see the challenges facing both the employee and the employer. Stay with us.
At Viva Kia, we don't just sell vehicles.
We sell experiences. A lot happens when you get behind the wheel. It's where we have the tough conversations and make the tough decisions, because on the road we find the time and place to think. It's where we make happy announcements or just have fun. Live your best life with Viva.
Sponsored by Viva Kia.
And welcome back. We have some tough questions. And, there's a lot of gray areas in HR.
You're making me sweat.
Sorry about that. Well, it's all interesting, and this is a learning process. And
Right.
when we listen to a podcast, it's always good to walk away with something that you didn't know.
Absolutely.
So, that question, a more educated employee is a more challenging employee.
Absolutely. The employee, when you have an educated employee with experience in the same field, very challenging, because the expectation is different now. It's not a bad thing though, because what they do is they raise the bar for everybody else. And so the educated employee can also be abusive. It could be to the point where they're demanding so much because they feel that they can get more pay elsewhere, better benefits elsewhere.
And they do.
Yeah, it just can't be burdensome to the employer. But that's why I go back to both of them, both parties need to be educated. Just like you expect an employee in a particular field to go through 4 years of training and certifications and whatnot, potentially 6 or longer, well then the employer should also go through the same process. They need to not just focus on, they're good at making tacos. They need to understand the ambiente, the environment. What is that? Creating protections, growth patterns, to where you can see that there's a potential growth within the company. If not, just be transparent, right? So that doesn't happen. They think that it's just, okay, it's a merger, it's good, we're ready to go. Be here 8 to 5, Monday to Friday, and that's it. You wind it up and put it to go or push it out. It doesn't work that way. I mean, it's a common thing. There are employees, there are people out there that prefer to do the day-to-day, and don't leave me alone. I'm used to, we're creatures of habit, right? And they're habitually on time or habitually late. But that's what you see. But what about those that stand out? How do we keep those? How do we retain those? That's the challenging part. And I don't think employers are educating themselves enough on all these Title VII's, protections, and how to not just keeping an environment free of any type of hostility doesn't mean just sexual harassment, doesn't mean just that. It also means that you feel comfortable to be open about, I have a problem at work, who do I speak to? They feel comfortable understanding that, look, I'm going to teach you exactly what your rights are. Because the more you educate them, the more comfortable they feel and understand it.
Do you see that maybe on the border it's a little or a lot more difficult because our cultura?
My clients up north, east, west, they all have something in common, and it's all an HR issue. It's all employees. The culture, you have certain areas where certain problems for culture and the way they act, the way they react. It is different in certain situations, but I think it balances out. So best example to give you is that, most people will attack a certain culture and say, they're hard workers. They never talk back to you. But nowadays, you can kind of brush that under the rug because people kind of copycat now. And it's no longer generational. It's no longer, again, COVID, what you said, it changed the world.
Everything.
It changed everybody because they see what everybody else is getting away with. And I always like to tell people when they come to me, well, I see this person showing up late or do this. And I said, why don't you see that other one that shows up early
The positive
and works
things.
hard? Why don't you copycat that, right?
Because it's
you'll always
easier
have
over
it.
here.
Absolutely.
It's easier
It's
over
easier.
here.
That's exactly right.
Right.
Success is not Monday through Friday, not 8 to 5.
That's right.
And so that's kind of the direction we have to learn how to talk to people. It's not just because you're Hispanic, you're Anglo, it doesn't matter. We have to sit there because even within the same culture, you're going to have people that are going to be more explosive than others. They're
Different personalities.
absolutely personalities that, are they going to be receptive? Are they going to be shy? Are they going to be affirmative? Are they going to be, you just got to learn how to talk to the people. But at the end of the day, you just want to make it to where just come to work, enjoy. I don't care whether you like people, just come and do your job. And that's the only thing we ask for. But that's a very I think you're getting to know now about HR, what we do.
Yes.
We're almost psychologists.
So that's right. So management, the managing of people is what's hard about being in management because you're always going to lose. The managing personality. Speaking about culture, when we come back, we're going to talk about culture and the words that we use and how we communicate and cómo nos saludamos, cómo nos vemos, cómo platicamos. And being a bilingual community is a challenge. So stay with us when we come back. We're going to continue talking with Tammy Cano from Cano HR Group. Stay with us.
Oye, Google, ¿qué tengo planeado para hoy?
Es tiempo para un cambio de aceite en Viva Kia.
Sponsored by Viva Kia.
And welcome back. Cultura. Cultura is more than just la comida mexicana here on the border. It's also the way we greet each other, the way we speak to each other. What I hear a lot, and honestly, I'm offended a little bit when I hear at the gym or at some public place or an event, and they use words that are not nice.
Yes.
And I'm not going to repeat those. Or I mean, you can if you'd
You're
like.
going to ask me to, of course.
I'm going to ask
because
you
you're
to
going to
do
say,
that.
what do you hear out there, Tommy? I want to tell you exactly what I hear.
And but it's become so commonplace. What do you do? Do you tell them don't talk like that? What do you do in the workplace when it's when somebody greets you, un abrazo, or un beso al aire, or ¿cómo estás? What do you do?
So, and I'm not specifically attacking a particular cultura or culture, but border city, we know that the majority of us are Hispanic, right? What you see, what you go into businesses and you hear, you can go out to dinner and you're going to hear the "way" word. Oye, güey, sí, güey. I give classes and I give trainings, and believe it or not, those employees themselves will tell me, but mister, that's like referring to someone as dude. And I'm like, well, refer to them as dude. It is not. For those of you that know la palabra güey, you know it's not. But it's okay. Now people say that it's normal.
Well, the correct word is buey, B-U-E-Y, que es un buey, which is a bull, un buey. But that's not the word that they use. It's spelled differently.
Right. That's exactly
So
right.
I did not say that word. I said buey.
Right. But they consider themselves to be oye, güey. They don't say buey. They say, so they think it's okay. That's a normal thing. And you know, it's adaptive, and everybody's doing that. Everybody's using it.
But is it right?
No, it's not.
No.
No. I'd like to tell people, if you go into a restaurant and you're taking your whole family with you, and you have a 5-year-old, you have a 10-year-old, you have a 15-year-old, and they're hearing all these people use the word "way" all over the place, are you going to be comfortable with that? No. You're probably going to complain. You're going to say, that's not right. You're not supposed to do that. Oh, that's offensive. You'll call the manager and say, that's offensive. However, you go back to your workplace and you hear it, it's the double standard. If you're offended by it in a restaurant, if you're offended by it, if someone was to tell you, oye, güey, and you barely met the person, you're going to get offended. So that in itself is already offensive, and it should not be in the workplace.
How about mija? Ay, mija, ayúdame con esto, mija.
Yeah.
I guess it's kind of the same, right?
La
Is it
cultura
the same?
mexicana,
La cultura mexicana.
people that I've, again, employees and managers alike, when I do talk to them and I ask them, how do you feel about the word mija? Would you be offended if I call you mija? Here's the answer. Most people will say, well, it depends. The tone? Who's saying it?
Right.
You know, if it's a good-looking guy, they're going to say, "Sí, papi," right? They're going to play along.
No, not necessarily.
But again, the playing along,
That's
like
the
way,
problem.
that's the problem. Is you don't open the door. Just say, "Listen, la cultura mexicana has and several, especially the females, they'll say, I only allow my father to call me mija. Okay, I only allow my parents to call me mija. I don't even allow my husband to call me mija." So. But again, it's a common word like way, unfortunately, that people think it's a cultura, it's okay to do. As HR, that's a nightmare because they'll throw it back out and say, I'm offended by it. And if it offends somebody, the difference here is, are you reasonable or unreasonable? Would a reasonable person be offended by the word mija? It's up for a vote, but I don't want to leave it up to the vote. If somebody's offended, I'm going to respect that person and say, okay.
Do you think more and more people are offended? I mean, a lot of us would go, ay, pues ahí, déjalo pasar. But do you find that more people are just ready to be offended and are offended by everything?
Yes.
And that's wrong too.
Absolutely. And, you feel like you're always walking on eggshells. Even when you're trying to make the right things, you're trying to fix, it's still walking on eggshells because it's still not enough. It's they're only fixing it because I said so, right? It's just never enough. But people they're getting to the point where it's almost everything is offensive. The way you dress, the way you react, the way you like, dislike. Social media, it's a different platform. And I'm sure you're going to have a podcast on just that alone.
We will.
But that, you can't, as HR professionals, we can't dislike, because that could offend somebody and say, you're not being neutral, you're not being the HR professional. So we always wear that hat, it never comes off. But to your point, it's not right that almost everything is offensive, because there's got to be some space there. So.
Delicados, everybody's too delicado.
It is. And it's even then, we have to be neutral and say, okay, that wouldn't offend a normal person. So here's the thing. Here's what the Equal Employment Opportunity, the Title VII that we referred earlier, the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, and even the Texas Workforce Civil Rights and New Mexico, they all look at two things, severity and pervasive. Okay. If it's severe, it's something that you are by law required to fix. If it's pervasive, it's something by law that you're having to fix. So pervasive being something as simple as, asking somebody out on a date, or even saying, oye, mija, it could offend that person, but if it does, then you need to tell that person, it already offended her. If I was to run into you, like, oh, buenos días, mija, you know what, Tommy, that offended me, okay? I need to stop. But if I keep doing it, then it could be...
That's pervasive, yeah.
Yes, that's pervasive, and that's where they say, he comes in and he's looking at her and calling her mija in a very weird... All you have to do is just say, it just looks at me weird, and that could be a problem.
With that, we're going to take a little break, and when we come back, we're going to ask Tommy some personal questions about his hobbies, about his dreams, and about what he plans for the future. We'll be right back.
Here at Viva Kia, every new vehicle comes with Apple CarPlay. Hey, check this out. Hey Siri, do you think I'm handsome?
No.
Hey Siri, are you sure?
Yes, I'm sure.
Sponsored by Viva Kia.
So we've been talking some real serious stuff, that affects our workplace, our friends, our family, everyone. So tell me about some of your hobbies. What do you like to do?
Oh, Lord. I think ever since I became an entrepreneur, I think the hobbies, they almost disappeared. I'd like to play golf when I do have time. That's one of my probably the stress relievers. I like to go up to the mountains. I like to travel. I'm a diehard 49er fan, and 3 years ago...
Not going to hold that against you?
3 years ago, my wife decided to, let's do season tickets. So I actually travel to San Francisco, and I go out and watch the games. So during that football season, it almost became a hobby where we're just traveling, watching football games. So it doesn't give me too much room for anything else, so to speak. But just go up to Ruidoso, 2 hours away, enjoy, fresh air, cleaner air. Those are, to say I have an actual hobby, I would just say
hard, huh?
It's very hard. Yeah. As an entrepreneur, you just don't have time. All that time taken away from you professionally, you got to limit the personal. What I do say, and I'd like to invoke this even with my staff, and you can at some point interview them and they'll tell you the same thing. It's very important for me to make sure that you balance both. I'm very big, because if you marry your business, your job, you're going to fail in your marriage or your personal life. But if you're married to your personal life and give too much to that, you're going to fail in your professional life. So teaching them how to balance both is really, I guess maybe you can call it mentoring is a hobby, maybe, perhaps.
Okay.
You made me wonder.
There you go. You can charge a fee for that.
There you go.
You can be a consultant for that too. So what's the future? What's the future look like for Tommy Cano?
You know, it's funny you say that because, and I know these questions were not, I wasn't prepped for this, but I was driving to my first appointment this morning, and I was thinking about a person that I spoke to during the week about retiring, and I said, how do I see myself retiring, right? And do I see retirement in the near future? And I don't think that's consulting can be done from anywhere, Stella. So I think that my future, if I'm going to put something 10, 15 years from now, I would say to prepare my staff to do what they've learned from me, but still be available to them. I think attorneys are probably the best example. I'm not an attorney, by the way. I'm not an attorney. I'm not. So what I do is I think if I do it from San Diego is one of my favorite cities. If I do it from San Diego, if I do it from Ruidoso, if I do it from home, if I do it from an office setting, I can do consulting from wherever. And as long as I just maintain the education aspect of it, I think it's just, it's going to take me a long, long ways, probably to the day I die. Okay, so what's the future? That would be probably my goal. I am a goal setter, so my goal was to pay off my house and before 50. I paid it off when I was 46. Okay. And then my goal was to buy a cabin in Ruidoso because I love it so much. And I fulfilled that goal. So now I think my goal will be, you know, put it on cruise control, still answer phone calls, you know, but
be a social nomad.
Yes, exactly.
A social nomad. You can go to Argentina.
I can do
you
it
go
from
to
anywhere.
Chile.
As long as there's
anywhere.
Wi-Fi and I can get a phone signal.
But you have to also have the discipline to do that, to say, look, I'm just going to do the 3 hours and the rest of the time I'm going to do something else and not be online the whole time. Okay. Anything you'd like to add? Anything that we didn't talk about that's it's important to share with our viewers and our listeners?
You know, human resources, there's a list that I have, and I didn't bring it here today, but we have a list that says 150 things to worry about in HR, and we didn't even touch, nothing. We didn't even put a dent in it. The most common things, I would tell employers here in El Paso, be careful with, Homeland Security, I-9, Department of Labor, EEOC, and the Texas Workforce Civil Rights, Texas Workforce Commission. Those are the most common. There's a lot of agencies out there. But for employers to maintain, I would say, just learn how to be compliant with those agencies, and you'll be successful. You don't have to, you can sleep at night is the best way to do it. And no, other than that, I think, thank you for having me first and foremost, and I hope it's not my only one. I hope that I do so well that they're going to be calling you and saying, we want Tommy Cano back on.
We want him we want him again. No, it's exactly what you said. We just touched just very lightly. So when Tommy walked in, he said, so are we going to talk a little bit before? I said, no. We're getting in front of the camera and we're having a conversation. So I did not brief him on any of this. And so that's what I like about the opportunity to have a podcast, because you're open, you're honest, you're spontaneous, and do a little bit of homework, but most importantly, you listen so you can have that follow-up question. So thank you so much for coming in. And no, this won't be the last time. It is the first time. So
next time I know you're just going to push me in the pool. I thought
That's
she was
right.
going to. I really thought she was going to hold me from my stomach and say, okay, paddle, stretch your arms. But no, she just pushed me in the pool.
But he didn't need it. Thank you, Tommy.
Thank you,
and thank
Stella,
you all for listening. Remember that there's always an interesting person with an interesting story, and we'd like to hear about him or her so we can have them on, and so you all can learn a little bit more about your neighbor, your friend, or just somebody that you'd like to get to know better and learn some rules and come away a better person and more informed. So thank you for listening. Have a great day.
Hey Google, what do I have planned for today?
Time to get an oil change at Viva Kia.
Sponsored by Viva Kia.